Hey everybody, I'm here with George Hicken and we are at the VMware Container Game System booth. This is pretty cool because you are actually able to run a DOS game inside a virtual machine, and this is meant as a show-off for the VMware Container System. George, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm
Okay.
running a little hoarse now given all of the traffic.
Okay, so the VMware Container System, how does it work?
Okay, so what we've done is we've taken the workflow simplicity and almost magic of Docker that developers have fallen in love with and are now starting to demand. And we've made that function in a sane fashion in a vSphere environment. So you don't have large opaque blocks of resource assigned to VMs running Docker hosts. You don't have physical hardware silos. What you have are containers presenting as first-class citizens within your vSphere infrastructure. Your operations people can see these containers as VMs. Your developers see these VMs as containers. One party is using it via the Docker API management mechanisms. The other party are using the vSphere management mechanisms. So it's what each group wants and needs to do their jobs efficiently and rapidly on a day-to-day basis, but with one unified back-end system.
So we all know how vSphere works, and if you mean a one-class citizen, does it also mean that you can, for instance, monitor performance of an entity, of a container?
Yes. So when you start a container with vSphere integrated containers, it is actually creating a full VM. Now, there's a lot of optimizations that occur in order to get the startup times comparable with containers, to get the memory utilization comparable with containers. But it is a VM. And this is why we're running DOS games. This is why we're running Prince of Persia. It's both to draw people in because it's an interesting, fun way of demoing it, but it's also a useful demonstration of the fact we don't rely on any in-guest mechanisms to do this. We're using the vSphere mechanisms to replace the Linux kernel mechanisms Docker depends upon. So we can have any operating system with a little bit of work, any operating system run as a container. So in this case, it's a DOS container that is a full DOS VM. In the case of Linux containers, it's a Linux container that is a full Linux VM. There's none of the restrictions that you have with a container model using a standard Docker host. It's Linux VMs that you love, created, authored, managed, manipulated via the Docker APIs and workflow that you love.
Okay. Can you give us a short demo?
Yes, certainly. Okay, so let's grab a keyboard. So what I have on the screen here is a command line console. It's running on the OS X that you see here, and it's targeting an appliance VM that is running on some ESX systems over there that have, they've got this appliance VM deployed on it, and that is providing a Docker API endpoint. And that is how I'm going to be interacting with the ESX system. So all of your regular Docker commands work work as expected. And if I'm a developer wanting an Ubuntu environment, I use it exactly the same way as I would a container in a regular Linux container host. But it's authoring a full VM, as I've said before. Obviously, that takes a little bit of time. In this case, it actually takes about 1.2 seconds. Okay. So what you saw just then, and is visible in the tasks view down here, that created a VM. It created a read-write layer where file system changes are going to be placed. It attached the Ubuntu container file system state to that VM. It booted the VM using instant clone mechanisms, which is how we've become this fast. And now I'm presented with an interactive TTY in that Ubuntu VM. Excuse me. As you can see, it's just an Ubuntu trusty release. Exactly the same thing for any other container you choose to name. The workflow is identical regardless of what it is you're doing. That was a Tomcat container, started again. It's about 1.2 seconds regardless of what it is you're running.
Okay. cool, cool. And now the nice part. I want to see some games.
Okay, so this takes a little bit longer because we didn't spend development effort on integrating the instant clone piece, but workflow is identical. It's DOS in a Docker container. The Docker host that we see here, the appliance VM, is configured to run MS-DOS containers in this case. So I'm going to run the Prince of Persia container. As I said, this takes a little bit longer because we've not integrated instant clone. The fact it takes this much longer gives you indication as to how effective instant clone can be when it's used well. It takes a little time to use well. It's not a silver bullet, but it can be very, very effective. So, Prince of Persia, graphical. So we need to have the VM console up and running. Here it is.
It's the out-of-band VNC viewer of the console of the virtual machine.
Yes, yes. Not quite as pristine in the workflow as having it present directly in line, but that's the price you pay if you want prettiness. And there we are. This is Prince of Persia, created and managed and run as a Docker container in a VM, running in vSphere.
Amazing, amazing. Nostalgia.
Sorry?
Nostalgia.
Oh yes, I used to love this game, but strange enough, I have not had time to play it whilst doing this because it's been really gratifying. But people have been, the game draws people in, but the conversations we've been having, they've been fantastic. But they're about the underlying technology. They're about what it means in their businesses. So the game is a good draw, but it's seen sadly little playtime, except by people wanting somewhere to sit back, relax out of the busy bustle of the conference. Would you like to have a play yourself?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, there I go. Well, many thanks, and I keep on playing, George.
Okay, I'll leave you to it. Let me know if you have any questions.
Great, thank you.